We're tracking shares of Boeing. Initially, the stock moved higher after revenue declined less than analysts were expecting. But the company did burn through nearly $4 billion in cash to deal with manufacturing issues after the 737 MAX plane saw one of its door panels fall out mid-flight in January. CEO Dave Calhoun said, "Our first quarter results reflect the immediate actions taken to slow down 737 production to drive improvements in quality." Remember, he's going to be stepping down at the end of this year. Our next guest has a buy on Tesla. We've got Bert Subin, who is the Director of Defense, Government Services, and Aerospace at Stifel, and he joins me now for some perspective. Bert, I mean, I guess in some ways the quarterly results were not a surprise, right? Because they telegraphed we're going to burn through cash flow. We're going to have hiccups when it comes to sales growth. Did you get a lot of your longer term questions about when can things return back to normal answered on today's call?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back on the program. I would say, yeah, that's right. So the CFO of Boeing was at an investor conference end of March and sort of spelled out a expectation for a $4 to $4.5 billion free cash drag in the first quarter. So it came in a little better than that. Earnings were slightly better. I think you saw some positives out of the services and the defense businesses. But, you know, it was a tougher quarter. It just happened to be a little sort of better than feared, I guess. In terms of the longer term questions, there's still quite a bit of uncertainty out there. I mean, the positives that we look at are really twofold. One, the backlog hit a record in the first quarter, almost $530 billion. And so we'd much rather be solving for supply than demand, and demand remains really strong. And so Boeing, as they, you know, over time improve their production process, is going to have an opportunity to monetize that backlog. And then two, I think after this quarter, you're going to have estimates sort of broadly coming in, and then you get to this situation that maybe more matches reality, where numbers will be lower probably for 24 and 25, and then Boeing, you know, gets back in the position of potentially outperforming. Some of the longer term questions, you know, around the Spirit acquisition, around the production path, the 2026 target for free cash, you know, a variety of things out there, still rather uncertain. And so we didn't expect those to clear up today. I think it still takes, you know, several months to get answers. And the number one thing we're really looking for is the announcement of the selection for the next CEO, because then I think a lot of these dominoes can start to fall into place.
I want to pick up on your point about the backlog being at a record and that's easier to solve for supply than demand. Help us understand just how sticky is that backlog? I mean, carriers don't have much of a choice, right? They have Boeing, they have Airbus. Is there maybe a longer term risk to demand that isn't going to show up immediately? Is it a backlog? Because literally they are backlogged, right? They're slowing their production. So just help me understand, you know, the comfort that you're getting in that backlog and why it supports a bull thesis.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reality is, I mean, airlines want to grow. You've seen a lot of constraints. I mean, you look at Southwest, United, Ryanair, they're all talking about not getting as many aircraft as they want, and that's driving up you know, fares for travel this summer. It's driving up sort of the unit cost for airlines. So they want to get new aircraft. In the meantime, you know, the aftermarket, which is mostly a services and parts related business, has done great just because, you know, there's been fewer aircraft being delivered. And so there's been an opportunity to put maintenance into older aircraft to extend the life of aircraft. But airlines ultimately want to get new aircraft and ultimately down the road grow. And so there's going to be, you know, pretty continued demand. We're in a little bit of lull here where, you know, Airbus is starting to increase its production, and that should help over time. But Boeing is, you know, creating a gap there where, you know, there's going to be demand for aircraft for a while. Just the last point there is, you know, if you want to get a new narrow body, so an A320 or a 737 from Boeing or Airbus, from Airbus, you're probably not getting that if you place it today until the early 2030s. For Boeing, maybe you're getting it 28 or 29, just in terms of your order in the backlog. And so I think airlines want to make sure that they have their order book, you know, pretty solidified going out. And there's several years that are sold out at this point. And so demand is really not a problem right now. And if anything, it's strengthening just because of this temporal gap.
There's a pretty ambitious target to generate $10 billion in free cash flow by 2026, you know, keeping in mind that they burned through $4 billion this quarter. And the CEO said we can still do it maybe 6 months later, but is there risk around that, given that there's no kind of timelines really attached to getting production and getting back to business in the way that it was before?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think people thought they might walk away from the target or start downplaying it, but they more or less reiterated it and said they can still think they can do it in the 26 timeframe, which, I think investors and sell side analysts discount. I don't think anyone actually is modeling in 10 billion for 26, but that could be an upside driver, because if they are able to achieve that, that's certainly going to be better than where expectations are. And so it's a little surprising they stick by it. I mean, if you do the quick math, I mean, the services business is outperforming. They're expecting defense to be roughly similar. And so it's where can they get in terms of production largely on the 737, but also on the 787, because if they can get to 50 and 10, I think maybe there's a chance they do that. It's just people keep pushing out their production expectations. And so the likelihood of that has gone down over time.